Hey everybody, it's JC Calhoun again with Not So Pro, and I am still wearing the same shirt I was in the last video. Today I'm going to help you master all 14 check patterns. So if you haven't seen the video before this, the intro to check patterns, I think is what I called it, then you should check that out. Because I'm using a lot of terms that are in that video, in this video, so you might get a little bit confused if you haven't already seen it. But if you already watched that video, that is great. I love that. So let's not waste any time. In the last video, I didn't really teach you the actual form of the check exercise. I just sort of did my own little variation because I felt like it was more appropriate for the intro. So instead of that, we're gonna use the actual exercise that Tom Hannum wrote. The form of this exercise is AAB, AAAB. A being the chosen pattern followed by 2 alternating eighth notes, and B being the chosen pattern played twice. Here's an example of the form using the check. 1, 2, ready, play. Now all we have to do is plug and play. Quick little interjection. I am aware that in the last video I said the right hand will never play on partial 2 or 4, and the left hand will never play on partial 1 or 3, and I lied. Sorry. The left hand will alternate on beat 2 of the A portions of the exercise. So forget about that for the eighth note patterns that I have in the exercise, or that Tom Hannum has in the exercise. I don't necessarily know why he did that, but he did. So we're gonna listen to him. I'm not gonna argue with a DCI Hall of Famer. So with that being said, feel free to grab a pad and play along with me. There'll be music on the screen as well as in the description. I'm gonna play each exercise twice through with 1 beat in between. So to get a good start on this, we're just gonna play the check pattern check, which is the exercise I played previously, and we'll just move on from there. 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, play. Now that we've got the check, let's move on to the 3-note variations. I don't necessarily like to move in numerical order for these just because I don't feel like it's very pedagogically correct. So we're gonna start with 4, go to 2, then go to 3, and then go to 1. Let's start the 3-note patterns with check pattern 4. All we're going to do is plug it in to the same part that the check was plugged into for the exercise. Here is check pattern 4. 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, play. Pretty easy, right? We just maintained a consistent right hand motion and took out that 4th partial of one of our left hands. Now let's move on to pattern 2. We can continue that same exact right-handed motion that we did in pattern 4 for pattern 2. The right hand does not change from either of these patterns. Let's play pattern 2. 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, play. We can see that the difference in pattern 4 and pattern 2 is just the placement of the left hand. Now let's move on to pattern 3. In this pattern, we're gonna maintain an identical left hand motion that we did for the check, and our right hand is only going to be playing the down beats. Take notice of that as you watch and play. Here's check pattern 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, play. The last of the 3-note patterns we're going to discuss is check pattern 1. And as you probably already noticed, this pattern starts with the left hand on the 2nd partial of the 16th note group, which means we don't have a downbeat, which also means that it's going to be a little bit more difficult to play. So we really have to focus on maintaining the consistency of the left-handed motion. Here's check pattern 1. 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, play. best advice I have for playing some of these left-hand dominant patterns is to prep the left hand earlier than you think. Trust your left-handed movement throughout the exercise and play the left-handed dominant patterns more often. It really just takes a lot of practice to get those down. They're sort of hard, but you got it. Let's move on to the two-note patterns now. I feel pretty good about the way that the two-note patterns are laid out. I do just have one little flip-flop that I'm gonna do. So now we have less partials and now they're gonna be easier to play. Wrong, it's not. More space means more room for error. So like I said before about prepping earlier for the left-hand dominant patterns, we're also gonna have to do that for the right hand now in these two-note patterns because there's just more space. We have to prep appropriately. Keep an eye out for the way that I prep for these next couple of patterns and try to imitate that. So let's continue. Let's go to pattern 5. Pattern 5 starts on the downbeat and only uses partials 1 and 2. Here's check pattern 5. 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, play. Pattern 6 is the inverse of pattern 5. We'll now start on the upbeat and only play partials 3 and 4. Here's check pattern 6. 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, play. Pattern 7 starts on the downbeat and only uses the first and fourth partial. Here's check pattern 7. 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, play. Pattern 8 is inverse of pattern 7. For this one, we're only going to use partials 2 and 3. Here's check pattern 8. 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, play. I'm going to switch the order of pattern 9 and 10, and I'm going to go 10 going into 9 because I feel like it's more similar to the 2 and 2 patterns that have been happening before, with one being downbeats and the other one being inverse. So here's check pattern 10. 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, play. You might be asking yourself, is this a joke? No is the answer to that. Remember patterns 2 and 4? Those both use the pattern 10 right-handed motion. That consistent motion that I was talking about before is actually just check pattern 10 with accompanied left hand. 10 is the foundation for both of those patterns. And it's still important to take this pattern seriously, even if it might be sort of funny to play. Like I said before, I don't really know why Tom Hannum didn't just put all of them as right hand lead for everything or right hand dominant for the eighth notes, but I'm assuming it has something to do with how we wouldn't do that in a normal situation, so why would we do that in the check pattern exercises? So to move on from 10, we're gonna go into pattern 9, which is the inverse of 10. We have no downbeats and no upbeats, and we'll only use partial 2 and 4. So here's check pattern 9. 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, play. Now this one, as you probably already felt, is no joke. However, it is the foundation of patterns 1 and 3. It's important to keep our left hands consistent in these patterns. So don't be discouraged or intimidated by pattern 9. This one is just difficult to execute on its own and to execute correctly. Both of your downbeat and upbeat reference points have been taken right out from under you. I like to work on this with a 16th note subdivision to help me out with that timing, just because, again, it's weird. So now let's move on to the 1-note patterns. As we learned in the 2-note variations, taking out partials does not make the exercise easier. Same is true in 1-note land. Now you need to be hyper-focused on the subdivisions for each of these. And yes, we will actually go in numerical order for all 4 of these. So starting us off with the 1-note patterns, we have check pattern 11. This one will only use the second partial. Here's check pattern 11. 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, play. In pattern 12, we're only going to use the third partial. Here's check pattern 12. 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, play. Now with pattern 13, we're only going to use the fourth partial. Here's check pattern 13. 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, play. And lastly, we have check pattern 14. This one is very similar to check pattern 10, where you're thinking to yourself, is this a joke? And again, I'm gonna say, no, it's not a joke, even though I know there's only 1 note being played on the downbeat. I get it. It might seem like a waste of time, but it's not. Here's pattern 14. We'll only use the first partial. 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, play. And that is all the check patterns. If I've brought you any value in this video, feel free to click the like button. If you want to see more of this same type of stuff, click the subscribe button and comment below of some things you'd like to see in the future. I'll see you guys later.